Warning: the information in this video is for general information only. I make no representation or warranty of any kind, express or implied, regarding accuracy, adequacy, validity, reliability, safety, availability, or completeness of this information. Please like and subscribe and share my video. Okay, here's my finished Honda Rebel Hawk. This is the Nighthawk gas tank. I bent that tab in. I cut the tab off this air filter. I took the rear pegs off. Here's my tail lights and brake lights. If you needed to adjust the fender a little more, you could put body shims up under here. I tied my relay and my fuse box up here with black tie wrap. I think these handlebars look alright just like they are. Seems like some people want to change things just to be changing things. Okay, this fender. This is the original Honda Rebel 250 fender. I welded in 13 holes. It would probably be a good idea to try to find an aftermarket fender that you like, maybe similar to this one. Now this is the way Dennis Kirk measures fenders. This is the measurements I took off the Honda fender. I think it'd be a good idea to get you a fender, unless you like welding and bondoing. Well, after this I'll show you the video of me making the brackets. Going. I'm going to convert my 250 Nighthawk to a 250 Rebel. I suppose you could do about the same thing on a 450, 650, or 750. I've already started this project, so I've already cut the frame off. And welded a bracket on here. Okay. I've cut my frame off 2.5 inches from the center of the shock to the back of the frame. I might should have made that a little bit longer. I don't think it really matters. I welded this bracket on here to hold the fender. The holes in the center of this bracket are 1 1/4 inch from the center of the shock. And there are 3 center to center, or 3 1/4 apart. I'm going to give a detailed description of my bracket. I've made several brackets for this thing. I'm going to give a detailed description on my brackets at the end of the video. Okay. My fender here, Honda 250 Rebel fender. Measure 19.5 inches from the end to here and draw a straight line across here. I've already drilled these holes, but we're going to pretend I didn't, because I drill the holes later. Okay, I put my fender in here and center that line I drew in the holes that I've already drilled. It doesn't exactly matter where you drill these holes at, I don't guess, as long as they match everything else. We'll stuff some rags under this fender to hold it into place. And it would be good if you had somebody to help you hold this. My son's holding the camera right now. I'm not. Of course, I've already. Okay. Got the line. Get it lined up. Look at the rear, get the fender lined up with the tire. Okay. Now this is going to be pretty easy to drill. I've got a socket on here so I don't drill a hole in my tire. It's pretty easy to drill because I'm just drilling through duct because I've already drilled it. Okay. That was easy. I bent this bracket to reinforce the fender. I laid this piece of metal out in the gravel driveway and beat it out to give it the same shape as the inside the fender. Well, I've already drilled holes in this bracket too. So I would get it centered in these holes. It'd be a good idea to draw a line across here. This doesn't have to be perfectly centered. Let's pull this tape off. Okay. Put your bracket in here. Mark this. And then drill these holes out. Which are already drilled out actually, but we'll say they're not. Okay. I've got some 3/8 bolts. I don't know if you can see where I have ground the underside a little bit, so it will sit straighter in this curve here. These 3/8 bolts are what, 1 inch long. So I'm going to turn the ground part out. to the curve. I'm gonna put some duct tape on here to help hold these in place. I've already pulled this off. Okay, 3/8 bolt, 3/8 nuts. Okay, we're gonna. When I put this bracket in originally, I'm gonna put lock washers. Well, I'm gonna put lock washers on here on my final assembly. Okay, when I put this bracket in here, I put it straight across here. I should have put the bracket at an angle because I had to bend this bracket. I had to bend this bracket to get that fender where I wanted it. It'd be a good solid job for a ratchet. This is at the final assembly. Okay. Get the fender centered with the tire. Come around this side here. Come around here. This is the bracket to support the bottom of the fender. Now we want the fender to align with the contour of the tire. I would cut this bracket a foot long and then trim it off when you're done. I cut it too short and had to weld a little piece to it. I drilled a hole right here, which doesn't particularly matter exactly where you put it because you're going to kind of fit everything as you go. I haven't got a pencil in my pocket. Get this fender where I want it. Hold it against here. And then take a pencil and mark it to where I want to drill it. Then I'm going to bolt this in right here. So let me go ahead and do that. Just stay up there here. I'll probably put okay, this is a stainless steel bolt. Stainless steel bolt. You can get them at the hardware store. They're as good as, probably better than chrome bolts. I mean, get me stainless steel nut. Alright, I'm just going to get this, eyeball this to get it straight. I'm just snugging this up for now. I'm going to tear all this apart. I need to take this fender. I need to weld all these. I'm going to leave these holes for my turn signals. I'm going to weld all these holes in and clean them up and paint this fender. The Honda Rebel strut fender brace, I bought some, and they just do not line up with the fender. If you wanted to, I'm sure you could find a brace, or maybe even cut this one down shorter maybe drill your hole here for here if you had to have it. I'm just gonna leave it off. I don't recommend you let anybody ride back here. Nobody needs to be riding on a Honda Rebel anyway, or a Honda Rebel Nighthawk, or a Honda Rebel Hawk. Okay. I'm not necessarily trying. I've got my fender lined up pretty good. I've got my bracket on here. I'm not necessarily trying to get this. I'm gonna just, where this bracket is sitting is where I'm gonna drill this hole at, which I've also already drilled it too. I don't really care if it's in the dead center of the fender because you can't see it anyway. I've got my socket on here to keep from drilling through the tire, so I'm just gonna drill through the fender and put a bolt. I'm just going to start this bolting here because I'm going to tear all this back down to finish it. Okay, I'm putting a bobber seat on here. Found the original bolt. Found the original bolt and put it right here. I also think I'm going to spot weld this bracket here. It's just kind of bent around, spot weld it right here. It's just kind of bent around there, not very sturdy. Drop this bolt in the hole for now. I can't find the correct bolt. Okay. This is the bracket I made to bolt the springs of this bobber seat. I just centered up this bracket, measured from inside out. You can see the bolts on this bobber seat line up pretty good with the bolts on this bracket for the bottom spring. I should put the correct bolt in here, but I can't seem to find it. I've got all this centered up pretty good. Okay, these bobber springs are a pretty tricky thing. To put on. You got to put your washer in here. Put your nut in there. Whatever everything in alignment. I put this piece of steel, this wedge looking thing in here to so I can put my wrench. Let's see. Okay. I'm gonna just try to start this thing with my knife here. This is not an easy. Okay, I have got it started. You take your wrench and go in here where I've got it wedged open. And I guess you can just go on around and around with this first one. You can't do this on the second one. Wouldn't be a bad idea to use a lock nut on that. This bottom bracket, which I will describe at the end of the video better, I've rough machined the circumference here. Some people use a protractor, I believe. I just took this is a spring off a lawnmower. I was thinking about using them. So I'm going to just trace around here and I'm going to grind that. Okay, I got all this, I lined all this up. And I drilled, well, a little bigger than a 1/4 inch. I'm going to put 1/4 inch bolts in here with lock nuts and tighten this brace down. But then this goes on the brace and not the motorcycle itself. I can bolt this bracket on here like I did this spring bracket without having to stand on my head. I can bolt both these springs on here, other springs somewhere, lower it down. I think I can get in here and put my bolt in after I've put my springs on. My spring, I spent almost spring, make it sit level. Well, I'm going to tear all this back apart, fill in my holes, paint it, grind this better. Take this front bracket off, the bottom bracket of the fender, and clean it up a little bit. And paint it. Well, I'm going to stop the video now, and I'm not going to video me filling all these little holes in and painting this fender with a spray can. Okay, here's the drawing of my seat bracket. It's 2 inches wide. It's made out of a piece of 2 inch wide and 1 inch thick cold rolled steel. It's 10 1/8 inches long. The spring bolts are 8 1/4 inches from each other. And in the center, these holes here are just for clearance for the bolts to hold the fender on. You could make, I made them rectangular because I was using the milling machine. You could drill them out round or whatever however the best way for you to do it. Okay, here's my holes that go to the frame. Mine are 7 1/16 inch apart. You might want to measure your frame and get them in the middle of your frame. Could be a little bit different, I don't know. Drilled them 5/16, but 1/4 inch bolts all the way through them. Okay, my spring bolt holes. I tapped tap them out. They're 5/16 by 18 threaded holes. Here's my measurements for my clearance holes. That's not so critical. If you put your fender bolts on the same way I did, that should be right. When I put this bracket on, bolted it down, this is the bottom edge here hit the top corner of my fender bracket that I welded on to hold the fender on. That's why I'm gonna weld these washers. Are about 1/8 inch thick. I'm gonna weld them on to the weight of the seat, and the rider will be on the frame and not resting on the edge of this bracket, pushing down on the fender. Here's my top fender bracket. It's 6 1/8 inch long. It's made out of 1 1/8 inch wide and 1/8 inch thick cold roll steel. The holes are in the center, and a little bigger than a 3/8 inch holes, 3.5 inches apart. Here's my inner fender brace. It's 5 1/8 inch long. I bent this curve to match the curve inside the fender. This is made out of the 1 1/8 inch by 1/8 inch thick steel. It's shorter on this end because there's a place for the wires to run through, runs along inside the fender. Okay, here's my bottom fender bracket. You need to cut off a piece of steel like 1 foot long. This is the same size as the last bracket. I've got this bit down at an angle to match the fender. Or sort of matched. Well, this fender is not sitting at the same angle as it would be on the bike. I went ahead and drilled my hole here. I drilled a hole near the motor mount, or in the motor mount on the frame, as I showed you earlier. I put this bracket in, just held it up against there, and then marked this hole here through the hole in the motor mount. I had trouble getting exactly where I wanted it, so I slid this hole out so I could move it back and forth. After you get this bolted in and your fender lined up like you want it, cut this, you can draw a line using the motor mount, well, or the frame, that's the motor mount, I don't remember. This line here, this angle here is just the shape of the frame there. I made mine too short. I cut mine off too short. I made it long enough, then I cut it too short, so then I welded a piece back on it. Okay, here's my fender. This fender is 6.5 inches wide on the inside. I don't know if this would be wide enough for a 750 Nighthawk if you're trying to do this on a 750. There's where the wires run through, while my bracket wasn't the equal length from the holes. Got these lights come from what the vice grip calls the jungle store. They're metal. They look pretty good to me. I had to take the toolbox off to have clearance for this bracket. I tried to make a battery cover out of this piece, but it just didn't want to work out. I just didn't do it. I think this breather will probably breathe better than them little cheap Chinese filters a lot of people use. I did cut an extra hole in here. Next time I'm going to kill the flies before I make my video. Must be some peaches in here. Here's my battery bracket. You know, this held this on. I cut that off and deburred it real well. I may make another bracket. I may get a piece of stainless steel later on and make a better looking bracket than that one. This is my seat bracket I was talking about earlier. I may try to have tried to reinforce it a little bit. Maybe put a little spot weld here and here. It's just a little flimsy looking to me. I guess y'all can need to see this. This is the top fender bracket. I wound up bending it. I put it in flat across the top there. I should have trimmed it just a little bit here and here and set it in at an angle, and I wouldn't have to bend it as much or any. Okay, I've got a minor problem. This bottom of this fender hits the inside of this swing arm. There's a seam on the inside of this swing arm. I may try to grind a little bit off. I need to move my fender over. One thing I could have done, my measurement from my bolt holes to the end of this fender was 19.5 inches. If I'd have made it 22 or 3 inches, this fender would have sit up here, and of course it had been rolled back a little further. Probably wouldn't hardly been noticeable. Just however you want to do it.